I guess Oprah does too. She's knocking on your door. What if Oprah came to your door and you're like, oh man, Oprah's about to give me a free convertible, and then she just takes your guns. She's like, I'm here with the feds. We're here to confiscate your guns. You're like, Oprah, what happened to the free cars? That's sarcasm, just in case I get censored or like deleted off the internet. They're like, Oprah's not taking your guns at your door. And I'm like, no, that's a joke. And they're like, joke? That doesn't process. Like, it's the sad times we live in, so I got to be extra careful when I make a joke. It's got to be labeled like I'm a food on a shelf, just like, warning, this is sarcasm, laugh, don't screech, scream, and smash windows. And people will be like, oh, sarcasm, I remember that from the 90s. Yeah, for sure, that was dope, but like, next time we're gonna arrest you. All right, we'll pop into it since it's starting. Thank you guys everyone for joining. The first thing I want to talk about, of course, we have the midterm elections. I'll get into that. But I want to talk about the power of branding, because branding is everything. I'm going to explain why, how, and it's seeped into politics our whole life, and it's really taking over the reality that we live in. I'm going to start with Apple. This has nothing to do with politics. So what is an apple? You look up an apple in the dictionary. It's a fruit. You bite into it, you eat it. You know, it's a biblical fruit as well, but it's a earth fruit. It grows and it's got juice. But now Apple isn't just a fruit. That's what it's supposed to be. That's the dictionary term. Now Apple is a brand and a company. So the company Apple has so much more money and power than the actual Apple, and they've rebranded Apple. So when you think of Apple, you don't think of the fruit, you think of the company. And I don't know copyright laws, but I'm guessing if you try to name your store Apple, if you sell apples and you try to use the word Apple in the wrong way, good luck not getting sued by Apple, the company. And it's become such a brand that you can't even really get apple juice. You know, you want to get juice from an apple. Most of the brands in the store that sell apple juice, they're not selling you like good apple juice. It's not just like someone got the juice out of the apple and put it in a box and sold it to you. It's probably got high fructose corn syrup in it. It's got all these other ingredients that have nothing to do with apple juice, but that's the apple juice you get sold. So our world has been taken over by, you know, crony capitalism, corporatism, total lawyers and politicians who hide behind lawyers, to the point where the word apple means so much more than an actual apple, and it's actually nearly impossible to get an actual apple that isn't actually genetically modified or fake or not an actual apple grown from God's great earth or whoever's great earth. If I'm atheist and I don't believe in God, that's fine, do you. I'm just saying. And also, I want to make a note before I move on to another way that they kind of took over the world with branding, is if you look at the apple symbol, it's interesting that it's a bitten apple, you know, kind of like the first original sin. Whether you're religious or non-religious, I think that's just an interesting symbol, how it's like, that's the big sin, and you got it on your phone, and you're on the phone all day, and you're looking at the half-bitten apple. It's like we're, in real life, just squandering our lives to, you know, the technocracy. But not to be negative or mean, I just thought that was interesting. So Apple, outside of politics, you're not really getting an apple. They own the word apple. It's total rebranding of a fruit. Go to politics. They use branding so much in politics, and they hijack dictionary words to the point where up is down, down is up, left is right, right is left, and they think that they own the actual word. And I want to say that this is bipartisan and it goes both ways, but I do find, I know people aren't going to want to hear it on certain sides, but it does seem to be the left wing, the progressive and liberal left wing, that has mastered the art of rebranding words to what they don't actually mean. I'll give you a lot of examples. First one is progressive. The word in the dictionary, progressive, means progress, to progress, to get better slowly over time or quickly. That's progressive, but progressive doesn't mean progress. If Trump makes progress and cuts NAFTA, they don't consider that progressive. If Trump raises the economy but doesn't do it through government programs, they don't think, so they don't actually care about progress. They're not a group that is set and sanctioned to follow all progress in the world and make sure every country is making progress. Progressive means basically a socialist and communist ideology where you're, you know, infused with capitalism a little bit. I think they all are, but it means socialism and communism. One like myself would possibly argue that that ideology, the progressive 2018 ideology, is actually a regressive ideology. I would argue that I'm an actions over words type of person. I don't care what people say. I don't care what people say behind my back. I care what they do. You know, actions matter more than words, and little petty conversation doesn't really bother me. So when it comes to socialism and communism, it sounds good, their word sounds good, but if you look at history, it pretty much has a 0% success rate. So it's like that idea that never really pans out. It's like building a house on a foundation that breaks every time, but it sounds like it's going to be a big hotel and it's going to have swimming pools on each floor, and you're like, oh man, this sounds really good, but every time they build it, it collapses at the core. You know, proponents of progressivism would say it works well in Israel, it works well in Sweden. I would argue that it doesn't. I would argue that everywhere that progressivism comes and it works for a little bit, it always backfires, because that leftist ideology comes with naivety, it comes with weakness and foolishness, and now all those progressive countries are losing to bad immigration and refugee policies and just a backwards ideology totally. So anyway, the word progressive doesn't mean progressive. We could have that conversation for years. Global warming, there's another one that was created for these, you know, political climate. So they said for years, Al Gore and many have said there's global warming. The globe's going to heat up, and we're all going to just drown because the oceans are going to get too big when the ice caps melt. Well, a lot of the early, you know, predictions were early enough that we know they didn't work. Now they keep moving them back and back and back. I do have to say, no offense, but I have to say some Christians do this with the end of the world. They're like, it's going to end this year, it's going to end next year. So both right and left wing have people that say the world's going to end all the time. But when it comes to global warming, they changed the name because it was a total lie. The globe was not warming, and they figured it out, and eventually enough people figured it out. So global warming wasn't a really effective word. So then they changed it to climate change, because it's going to heat up in some areas, it's going to cool in some areas. Kind of sounds like the seasons. You know, it heats up and it doesn't, and temperature and the earth shifts and there's volcanoes. I don't know. They had to change the name because global warming wasn't real, but it's a good term. Women's March. Is it a march for all women? Absolutely not. I've gone to several of them. I've met a lot of good people. I'm very optimistic, so I say, even though I don't agree with them politically, I find that all the Women's March and the Gun March, they're good people. They're chill. I have a good time. I just act like I'm at a really weird party. Half the time I'm with Fleckas, sometimes I'm by myself, and I have a good time. I'm like, man, this is the weirdest street party I've ever been to, but I'm with it. But it's not a women's march. It's a Democratic Party march. It's a pro-abortion march. It's a, you know, Trump works with Russia march. Like half the signs are like, Putin needs to go. And I'm like, what does this have to do with women? It's because it's not a march for women. It's a march for liberal democratic women, which is like splitting down the middle, and you're not including half women. Universal health care. It's a really good branding word. You know, it's universal, coming from the universe. Well, no, it's coming from your taxpayer dollars, so it's not the universe supplying it. And it's not singular, everyone gets it healthcare. In my personal perspective, I would rebrand it as a scam, singular, government-owned, mandatory fee. That's my name for it. I don't call it universal healthcare. I call it the singular, government-controlled healthcare system that is a mandatory fee. If you try to opt out, they'll just come and steal your money. I know it's a little long, I have to shorten it up, but that's my branding of it. But what I'm trying to get to is, let me just end real quick. Right wing has been branded horrifically because left wing people and the media are the branding experts, the masters, the gods of branding. Sorry, conservative, you guys have not been good at this for a while, and you've got branded into oblivion. All the things that conservatives love have been branded. It's not that they're really bad. It's not that there's not a compromise to be had. It's that the left wing, the media, academia, the social media companies, and the experts and pundits have been genius level branding words that don't mean what they mean to go against right wingers. So if you say you're right wing now, people will want to punch you in the face, attack you, think you're a Nazi or a criminal. They'll take your signs out of the, you know, out of the ground. They'll smash your signs. They'll in some cases, unfortunately, I think one Republican office had someone shot into the windows of it. I'm not saying that everyone does this. I'm not saying that the right wing doesn't have bad people too. I'm just saying that the right wing has been branded into oblivion. And these people who have branded right wing into oblivion have also branded the word left wing. They've branded themselves as the liberal savers of humanity. They're going to save the environment. They're going to save the country. They're in charge of the black and Latinos. They're going to save women. They're going to save the transgenders. They've branded themselves, even though it's not really true. They've branded themselves as the saviors of humanity. So this is just a simple lesson outside of elections. Yeah, people are Ted Cruz, Beto. It's going to be a big election tomorrow. I'm excited, and I'm going to talk about it in a second. But I wanted to do a rare lesson or conversation, if people already know, on how important branding is, not just to things like Apple and fruits and vegetables and everything that we have on this earth, but also to politics. It's branding that controls the minds of the masses. It's mass media. They control 80-90% of mass media, and they use constant branding to the point where, you know, it's almost impossible to figure out up from down, left from right, this from that. And that's something that conservatives and libertarians and Green Party voters and progressives and whoever doesn't know, who's not in the know, learn branding and learn how to be honest, I would say, and fight back against the false branding of humanity. This is something that Trump did very well before Trump came into office. Republicans and conservatives were getting branded into hell, and I don't know that they ever would have been able to flip it, but Trump did a good job. Now people are starting to come through. But the reason that I talk about this over politics is because false branding is what's, you know, hurting and holding back our society. False branded foods, false branded pills, false branded everything, false branded politicians, false branded celebrities. It's false branding. It's taking a pile of doo-doo and branding it as a full course meal. So you're eating the doo-doo because it's everywhere and they've convinced you that it's, but you're eating poop. You know, metaphorically, hopefully no one's really literally eating poop, but who knows? It's a weird, wacky world. I'm sure there's feces on certain things and people eat poop all the time by mistake. Anyway, I've already talked about poop more than I ever wanted to, but what I'm saying is until the masses get through the branding and understand that they're being sold lies all over the place, this will make America and humanity a lot better, and also it'll make it a lot more honest so we can get to the real discussion. Now I want to talk about the mid